Do you have questions about your finances, saving or spending, or just feel like you could do a better job of understanding financial literacy in general? We have on today's show Britt Baker, who is a founder of Dow Janes. And it really was this group of women that started in her living room that came to her and said, Britt, teach us about our finances. Teach us how to have smart money and make good decisions with our finances. And this group has now grown to close to 10,000 women and individuals who want to overcome debt, master money management, and embark on their investment journey. Britt's mission is to make financial literacy accessible to all. And on today's episode of the Rainmaker Family Show, we asked her where this passion of hers started from, and even questions like, what are some types of conversations that every family should actually be having about money at the dinner table, but might not be asking? Grab your notes, make sure to share this episode with a friend. It's a good one.
All right, we're so excited for this episode. You're in for a treat, listeners. Welcome to the show, Britt Baker.
Hello, so nice to be here.
We're so glad to have you here. Now, Britt, we had a fun question for you just to break the ice. If your financial life were a movie, what would the title be and why?
Ooh, the title of my financial life would be Share the Wealth. And the reason for that is that my whole life's purpose in starting Dow Janes is really to share financial education and trying to democratize wealth and make it so that anyone can achieve the financial status or level that they want to, so that they don't have to worry about money. And so that would sum it up.
I love that, Britt. And I heard that Dow Janes started like in your living room just as a place to like gathering people as like an investment club, which I love that. I'm sure those small beginnings were just so incredible. I would love to know, like, what was that first spark of inspiration or maybe even frustration that told you like this movement, what I'm doing needs to be bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was living in San Francisco and was part of a women's group, had a bunch of girlfriends who were all, around the same age, like early 30s, and none of them knew how to invest. And I had just gotten back from business school on the East Coast, and they turned to me and said, like, Britt, you know about investing. Can you teach us how to invest? And so I started this, what we called kind of like book club for finances in my living room, teaching people the basics of investing. And what was really cool was it just gained momentum. Like every time someone in the group told their friend about it, their friend joined the next meeting, and it just spread to the point where I would go to, parties, friends' birthday parties, and people would say, I heard about Dow Janes. I want to be in it. And this was enough. And I was like, we have to bring this online. We can't just reach people in the Bay Area. More people need to have this education.
That's so cool. You've really dedicated like your life since this point to transforming financial mindsets. And I feel like that doesn't happen unless you've gone through these transformations, right? Like we're big believers in oftentimes what you carry is what you can impart in people that you lead. Mm-hmm. So what was one of the first mindset shifts you remember when it comes to finances, like in your financial journey, and how did that shape your work and what you're doing to this day?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many. I'll do, there's shifts that you go through as a child when you realize like, oh, how my parents relate to money isn't how I need to relate to money. That's a big shift that can happen. And then there's shifts that happen later in your adult life when you're, managing your own finances and kind of become aware of these stories that you have. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I had a pretty big scarcity mindset, which is really common in finances, like feeling like you never have enough. And that it's, there will never be enough. And that really shifted for me, I think, when I just took on a minimalist approach to life generally and realized like, oh, I have enough just with what I have right now. And I can start using it differently, which is more aligned with my values. And even though the financial situation didn't change, it felt like abundance. And when it feels that way, just how you relate to money, how you use money feels totally different.
That's amazing. When you made that shift of almost like minimalism and like thinking like, do I really need this? And when it came to like your finances, like what are some of those key things that you would almost like walk yourself through when you were about to make a purchase or an investment?
Yeah, I love the question. So one of the things we do in our program, the $1 Million Year, is we have everyone track every dollar that they spend for a month. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, it's it's kind of like basic budgeting, but more than anything, it's to bring your consciousness to your spending. And so spend, $4 here, $36 here, you write it down in the spreadsheet. You write if it was a need or a want, which is your first way of kind of getting in touch with, is that something that you needed or you wanted? And then you write down if you enjoyed the purchase. Like, do I feel good, bad, or neutral about what I just bought? And start to notice like, oh, I'm just spending things because I either feel like pressured to do so, or it's a habit, but I'm like, I don't feel good about this habit that I'm doing. Or, it's convenience. Like I'm buying takeout. I have to do that, but like, don't feel great about it. And so you just start to track how you feel about your spending. And ideally you're shifting more and more to feeling positive about all of your expenses. And so that's like one way, is just tracking your own emotions around spending. The other big piece that we bring into the program is values alignment. And so is this purchase aligned with my personal values? So back to the takeout one, it's like, if you value your own health and your, eating well, is that really aligned with your values versus, batch cooking something a week before and using that during the week? And so between the like emotions of spending and values alignment, that's how we try to bring both consciousness, and you end up minimizing your spending in the process.
Wow.
That's really cool. I know Stephen has done that with tracking his time, like
Yeah.
noticing spending his time,
Oh my
learning how to
gosh.
outsource better. But I love that about your spending, and then putting the emotion to it. I know like there's so many items. I'm a little bit more of a spender, so I should definitely do this exercise and like hone back a little bit, because I get emotionally invested when I should just like, what if I just walked away? And then have I thought about that purchase? No, So I'm loving that. Britt, I would love to know, when you were growing up, were you taught a lot of these like financial lessons, or do you feel like you had a good upbringing in that? I know you said you had like scarcity mindset, but were there like mentors or people that really, I guess, like sparked your interest of like, I want to learn more about finances and be able to make powerful decisions myself?
Yeah. So I was raised talking about money from a pretty early age. Like if we wanted a toy, if my brother and I wanted to buy something, we would have to pay for half of it using our allowance or our birthday savings or whatever. And it was my parents' way of saying like, do you really want it? Like think about it. And then there's, you have to be bought in to this thing you want. Like we're not just going to buy you things. And so it was having us start to make decisions pretty early on about knowing that, there aren't endless resources. I was also, taught over and over again from my grandmother to just save everything. That was like drilled into me from a very young age. And then my dad taught me about compound interest and investing when I was 7, which I recorded a YouTube video about. It was called the Daddy Bank, and I would have to like calculate the interest myself, but then I earned compound interest, and it was really an incredible way to learn these concepts and really have them manifest. Like I would, I'd make $100 in interest because I'd saved like so much birthday money, and then getting this compound interest. And it's like, that was remarkable as a kid.
Yeah. How cool. I mean, now you work with so many women, moms, families. What's one question or one question about money you think every family should discuss around the family dinner table, but maybe they rarely do? What's something like that?
That's a hard question because, a lot of people have different philosophies around discussing money with children. And there's like certain ages where, they shouldn't be involved in this. And then there's a certain age where they should. One thing that should absolutely be discussed is expectations for when the parents are not going to support the kids anymore. For us, that was when we went to college. It was like, you have an allowance for when you're in college, and then out of college, you are completely on your own. So find a job, figure out what you're going to do, because that's on you. And I think if that conversation isn't had and people kind of wonder, are mom and dad still going to help me out? It's harder for the kid to kind of jump off on their own.
Yeah, that's very wise. Yeah, I think a lot of families, it's just kind of assumed or vague, or it's like not talked about. So yeah, that's really powerful, just having a clear expectation up front. What would you say? I know you went to Harvard Business School, like you learn a ton there, but what would be something that they didn't teach you, right? That you kind of learned out in the world, like about money, mindset, entrepreneurship. I know now you're running a big organization. what's something you're like, man, Harvard could have never taught me that.
Any seasoned entrepreneur will tell you it's not about how much you make, it's how much you keep. We got to increase your income while decreasing your expenses. So what if there was a way to decrease your taxes, to protect you against liability, and to open up doors to business funding for your business? This is where our friends at Prime Corporate Services come in handy. They're experts and they help our Rainmakers get structured in the right way. We worked out a deal with them just for our Rainmaker community to get you a free complimentary consultation with one of their experts. If you're starting a business and you want to get all your ducks in a row when it comes to the legal entity for your business structure, these guys are the go-to. If for a similar package, you would pay like $1,200 on LegalZoom, but this company gives our Rainmaker family a serious hookup. Not only can Prime help you out with getting all your business entities set up, they can help you with your taxes as your business is rolling, and eventually help you with even estate planning for your family legacy. We put all the info on rainmakerfamily.com/deals. Go there. You can book a free complimentary consultation with Prime Corporate and get set up today. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/deals.
Yeah. I know you have a lot of business owners as listeners. And so one piece that I would love to share, which is like just a golden nugget for entrepreneurs. And this, definitely don't learn this in business school. Didn't even learn it from a mentor. I actually learned this from my business partner, Lorianne. And it's the concept of red light, yellow light, and green light activities. So as an entrepreneur, it is so tempting to do a new website, to do branding for your company, do Instagram. Like all of these things are red light activities. They are fun. They are the things that take your time. They also cost a lot of money and they do not lead to sales or revenue. And so those are red light activities. Green light activities are things that directly lead to sales. That's like doing a sales call or sending out an email, selling a product. What else? Yeah, pitching a product. Doing like a free workshop where you then are also pitching it. Those are all green light, leading directly to revenue. And in the beginning of your business, even though it's so tempting to spend money on red light, you should really be only spending money on green light activities until you've proven your business. And once it's proven and it's running and things are going well, then you kind of like earn the ability to spend money on red light activities. I'll just define yellow light, which for those who want to like fill in the whole picture. Yellow light are basically things that support green light activities. So it'd be like writing the email that you're going to send out about your promo, or like designing an offer that you're then going to share with someone.
Yeah. That's great advice. I think I actually don't know this. In the living room, I'm assuming, was that free? And when did you transition from free to paid? And what was that first kind of iteration? What did it look like? Because I think a lot of our listeners are like that. We're like, man, if I can get paid to do this thing I'm really passionate about, I'm doing for free. Like I'm already into, that would be so cool. So tell us about that transition from like, almost like the beta group, the free thing, to like, oh, let's make this a real like paid program.
Yeah. So the living room version was always free. It was just like a community offering. And once there was kind of that momentum, people wanting to join, it's like getting bigger than there was room in my living room. We decided to, in concept, turn it into a business. But the way that we actually did that is we did 20 interviews, hour-long phone interviews with people who were in the original Dow Janes book club and said, what do you want? Like if we could design the perfect course for you, what would be in it? What would be the different components? And we learned like, I want step-by-step curriculum. I want a one-stop shop. I want the option to have coaching. I want to feel like I'm part of a community. And so then we built the $1 Million a Year around those desires. And we didn't actually build the curriculum. We built a sales page describing what would be in the program. And we pre-sold it. So we sold it in January of 2020. It's a description of this thing. It doesn't even exist. And we put it out into the world and said, will 20 people buy this? Because if 20 people will buy this, we will then build it. And we sold it at a huge discount in the beginning just to see. It was $1,000. We had 40 people sign up.
Wow,
and so we had $40,000 in the bank account. We'd done nothing yet. And then we spent the next 9 months building out the curriculum and the program and staying just one step ahead of our members in it.
That's amazing. Way to green light that. That was awesome. You didn't even Didn't even build anything. That's like tips we give people too, because we've done the opposite. Like, let's go build this whole thing and spend a ton of time on it, and then it doesn't sell. You're like, whoops, I built the wrong thing. So that way to go, doing it the right way.
When
Yeah.
would you say some of those like red light activities, like when would you give the green light for some of those red light activities for like, say, one of your students who's trying to maybe build a business while learning more about being financially savvy, like in your program?
Yeah. I'll share what we did, which is we had an intern run Instagram. So we didn't pay her. She just wanted to run it. And she was a student of ours. And so we let her just post whatever
Yeah.
she wanted to Instagram, because we knew like quantity mattered more than quality at that point. So we invested nothing in it for at least a year, maybe 2. And then again, we paid someone to run it. We never did it ourselves because we knew it wasn't worth our time. And then in terms of a website, we literally did it last year. This is our 5th year in business. We waited 4 years to have a professionally done website. I locked it up on Squarespace.
Yeah.
Through the first rounds. So it's, everyone has a different comfort zone. Some people like really care about how their brand is perceived. For us, it was like good enough, make something good enough, and then focus on the other pieces of the business.
Yeah, that's great. I would say our next question I want to dig into would be just kind of like the client journey a little bit. So, we have a lot of moms, a lot of women in our program who are starting to make money. They want to be savvy with money. Where, like, I don't know, if you could go back to the first time, you got that first paycheck or the first like large sum of money, you're like, man, what do I do with this thing? What advice would you kind of whisper to your younger self?
Yeah. So the first step, if let's assume there's no credit card debt, because if there's credit card debt, like that is the first step. Pay it all off. You're paying absurdly high interest rates on that, and it's just hurting you. So pay that off. Assuming someone doesn't have debt, credit card debt, then the next thing they're going to want to do is save an emergency fund. And that is you can put it into a high yield savings account. This is something a lot of people don't know about, but it's a bank account that ideally is separate from your checking account. So you don't see it. You're not tempted to spend it. You can get like a 4 or 5% interest rate on it. So that money can be growing, but you still have access to it if you need it in case of emergency. That's the next step. And then beyond that, once you have a fully funded emergency fund, the soonest thing you want to start doing is investing. And if you're, no matter who you are, I guess, you want to start investing in your retirement funds, because those allow your money to grow tax-free. And so there's just a lot of benefits to having it in a retirement investment account rather than a brokerage account.
Do you see like other favorite investments in your community? So you got retirement funds. Do you see people investing in stock market, crypto? I mean, like, what are you seeing if you had to like say like, okay, I look at my community, what's the percentage of people investing in what are they looking at right now when it comes to investments?
Yeah, let me pause on just your question, because I want to like break down a really common mistake people make in nomenclature, which is that people think that when they have a retirement account, that is an investment. But accounts are literally just what hold the money. And so a retirement account, or specifically an IRA or a brokerage account, those are just holding places. And then once the money is in those accounts, then you can invest it. And the things that you would invest it are exactly what you just said: in the stock market, in cryptocurrency, in real estate, and various different things. That's just definition.
That's really good. I made this mistake, actually. I'll just be totally transparent with the audience. I put money for our sons in like a Roth account and then didn't invest it.
Totally.
So I just sat there for a year, and it just like, I went back a year later. I was like, oh, whoops. Like I actually didn't, like, I just wasted a year. Basically, I was like, wow, that was, I mean, not that costly of a mistake. You can't put too much money in these type of accounts, but I was like, wow. I learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because it is so common. We have people all the time who are like, oh, I'm invested. And then you go look at their account and it's just the money is sitting in there, but it's not really invested.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So we talk about that a lot. But to answer your question of like, what are people investing in? What we teach is to invest in the stock market. That's the only thing we teach in our program. And the reason for that is that the stock market has the longest history of any investment. I mean, not in real estate, but real estate's you can't get into with like $1,000. And so because of the historical returns of the stock market, and because we're teaching people to take a long-term approach to investing, that's what we're talking about. And more specifically, we're talking about ETFs and index funds generally. So depending on people's like how into the details they want to get, we may say a target date fund is a good route for you, which is a one-stop shop for investing. And if they want to actually build their own portfolio, then kind of like a mix of ETFs and mutual funds is what they end up doing.
Okay. That's awesome. I remember reading, what was the book? Money Master the Game. Tony Robbins, he interviews a bunch of these fund managers and things like that. And I think this was like, I don't know, it must have been 2017, 2018 or something. And we had kind of just been investing in mutual funds. And I didn't really realize how many fees and things were like involved. I don't know. What's your opinion on mutual funds compared to like index funds?
Yeah. So I wish it were like totally black and white. I'll speak in generalizations, which is like generally mutual funds have higher fees than ETFs. And so on the whole, I'm pro ETFs. I love ETFs. They're like super low cost to get into, very low fees, similar performance to anything else. There are a couple occasions where I do invest in mutual funds, and that's because they are hosted by Vanguard and they have low fees. And so it's like you have to look at the details, but generally I'm a huge no on anything that is managed by an advisor. There are a handful of funds that have low fees and also have strong performance.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. I know after reading that book, I like moved everything out of there and learned a lot in the process.
Yeah, Britt, I would love to know. I know you talk a lot about having your clients like chart through a whole month of like what they're spending and have this like emotional connection, and then also setting up values on your life and what the things that you like really value. So maybe you like value going on a vacation every year, and that's high priority versus like, spending money on clothes or whatever. I would just love to know, like, do you walk your students like once a year through like a vision casting, or even a way, say like they want to go on a more expensive family trip in the next coming years? Do you kind of like have almost like something to help them achieve those goals, or just like what are those steps that you feel like need to be in place, especially as they realize, oh, this is a high value of mine, but like I'm not quite there yet? So how would you encourage them to almost like work towards those goals?
Yeah, I love the question. You also like very much read into me. I love vacations and I hate buying clothes. So speaking to me. So generally we're working with people for 1 year in our program. It's 12 months of access in the $1 Million Year. And so we have fewer of those clients who we get to work with like year after year after year as their values change. And maybe they're moving out of the house and it's like, oh, now I have all this extra money. What should I spend it on? We do. So I'll add that our $1 Million Year course is really financial foundations. So in that course, we're building systems. We're making sure you're debt free. You have your emergency fund. You're ready to invest. And so it's kind of like the groundwork. What we're talking about here is kind of like the next level of like, okay, how do I fully realize the power of my money and use it exactly how I want to? And we have another course called Wealth Building Accelerator, where people work one-on-one with a coach. And this would be the exact type of thing that you would work with a coach and say like, okay, here's the amount of money I have. How should I allocate it this year so that I can make sure that I'm doing this family vacation that I really want to prioritize? So that's one example. But I love the question of like, as goals change, how do you keep those in mind with your finances? Because at the end of the day, like that's the purpose of money. It's so that you can live your best life and not have to worry about it, and really create these experiences that you want to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any tips for, or maybe you walk you through like your students in their beginning in your program? And there is like, again, I already admitted on this, and I'm a little bit more of a spender, and I have reeled it back, in the last couple of months for sure. But how do you have your clients get over like that dopamine hit that happens when you like spend money, for those that are in your program that are more of the spenders?
Chelsea's like asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. There's two things I want to speak to on this. One is that we added a bonus workshop specifically on this. It's like for what did we call it? It was said impulse spending, how to prevent impulse spending. Like when
Yeah.
you get that dopamine hit, and there's something that happens when you learn what's happening to you at the chemical level. I mean, you mentioned it here. It's like you get the dopamine hit. When you become aware that that is what's happening for you, that's the shift, is like, it's awareness. And then you can start to change it. We have a couple really specific tools, which are like, if something is over $100, give yourself 24 hours before you purchase it. Like walk away, see if you still find yourself thinking about it. And if you do, then go back and get it. As long as it's like in your budget and you've planned for it, et cetera, et cetera. The other piece I'll add is that step 2 of our program of $1 Million Year is called Heal. And it is all about looking at your relationship to money. And it's, I think, the only financial course out there that really deals with the emotional piece of money as well as all of the practical stuff. And nothing can shift on the practical world until you've dealt with the emotions. And so this is like looking at why I spend money the way that I do, or how did my parents spend money that I saw and I've just adopted without even thinking about it? Or is am I like filling a void by spending money, or am I not spending money because I'm afraid? Like, what's really there? We also have people fill in. It's a great exercise. It's basically a fill in the blank, like getting your subconscious to react quickly. So it says like, money is blank. Rich people are blank. Like billionaires are blank. And it's just like getting you to think really quickly about what your associations are with different elements of money. And so you can begin to see like, oh, here's where my story comes from. And a lot of people have this perspective that like, oh, money is bad, or people who have money are evil. And so it's starting to shift like, oh, I can be someone with money and still feel good about myself. Peace.
That's so
Wow,
good.
that's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah. What about like the opposite? I was having this conversation with a girlfriend, and their business has been doing like really well, and they're allocating funds and doing all these different things, but they're just having a hard time, like her and her husband just in general have a hard time spending money on themselves, and not even like extravagant things, but just like, oh, like, it was a good month. So like I would, I'm going to purchase this, or going on a date night, or, going to a fancier restaurant. What about like that mindset when there's almost scarcity or maybe shame around like spending money on yourself or your spouse or someone you really care about?
Yeah. This also speaks directly to me. This is how I was with money for a long time. And there's 2 ideas I'll share. The one that worked for me was, so I love raspberries. But raspberries, at least I live in California, it's like $7 for a pint of raspberries.
Yeah.
And I couldn't justify it. But, I have the money to buy raspberries. So like I should be buying them. And so my husband proposed, he was like, why don't, when you buy raspberries, you buy 2 and you give them to the person who's behind you in line.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that'll get me to buy raspberries. Like if I can just like be generous in the process and like, taking care of me and taking care of, the mom behind me, felt, that's kind of like that hit for me. That really worked.
That's
The
so
other
cool.
thing that kind of works for people is like use it or lose it fund, which is got, $300 for date nights this month. And if you don't use it, you are donating it to like of your choice. So those are just kind of tactical ways to try this.
I love that.
That's really awesome. I love that. Like pairing the generosity,
Yeah.
because that really is kind of the opposite of scarcity, right? It's like that opposite but greater, right? Thing now just diffused it. And that's why we love working with moms, especially because they just like give them money and they want to give it away, which is so awesome. You probably see this within your community too. It's just like, yeah, you give a guy $1 million. She's like, oh, I'm going to get the car. I'm going to get these things. You give a mom $1 million and she's like, who can I give this to? Like, and who can I like change and impact? And that's so cool. What would you say, like when you dream a little bit, Dow Janes, 50 years from now, what do you hope the world will say about Dow Janes?
I hope it's a household name. I hope it's the way that everyone got their financial education. Maybe it's the curriculum that's in schools, or it's what everyone does to just learn finances. It's kind of like the new Dave Ramsey, you might say.
I love it.
Yeah, that's so good.
That's good. It's time for a shift, I think. Dave's been doing it long enough. Hey, okay, which I'm gonna throw in one bonus question. Speaking of that generation, the baby boomer generation, I've heard you kind of speak on this opportunity, right? This wealth transfer. A lot of these baby boomers, they own businesses. they're retiring.
Mm-hmm.
How can women position themselves specifically, like in this next season, 5, 10 years, so they don't miss this opportunity of wealth transfer that's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is the biggest wealth transfer that has ever occurred. And it should lead to more women having money than they've ever had before. And the way that women will best position themselves to benefit from them, to make the most of this, is really to have the financial education. It's to learn, oh, when I get that money, what should I do with it? What are my first, second, and third things that I should make sure that I take, go and do with it before I do anything else? And that's, a huge piece of what we are teaching is the literacy of just knowing, like, what should be your priority and why? Because in personal finance, it's all learnable, but the order of operations matters so much. There's because of interest rates and the way it works, like you have to pay off your credit card debt first. And some people think like, oh, I want to start investing, but they're holding on to credit card debt and don't realize that like investing is going to do nothing for you when you're paying 28% on your credit card.
That's good. Good wisdom. Well, Britt, thank you so much for being here on the Rainmaker Family Show. I know people are definitely resonating with this message. How can our listeners find you online? How can they connect with you guys deeper in what you're doing at Dow Janes?
Absolutely. Would love to connect with your audience. So you can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is dow.janes, just our company name. And then if you want to learn more about our programs, you can go to try.dowjanes.com/Rainmaker and join one of our webinars and just learn more about how we teach. And if you're interested in
Awesome. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes. Share this episode with someone in your life who you want to start a financial book club with. the financial, what was it called? The home group with, and go through this together. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Rainmaker Family Show.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you're not a part of our mastermind yet, I want to say I think you're missing out. Our heart here at Rainmaker is to create total abundance for you. That's why we're offering a free one-on-one family freedom design session for you, our faithful listener.
Yeah, if you want to hop on a call with our team, see if it's a good fit to build a business that creates time freedom for you, financial abundance, and helps you leave that thriving family legacy. That's what we're all about in our mastermind. You can grab a time on our team's calendar at rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind.